I'd like to call to order the Plan Zone Commission meeting of today, Tuesday, December 18th. I'd like to ask anybody in the audience to please turn your cell phones off as they could interfere with our audio recording. I welcome anybody in the audience to speak on any of our agenda items tonight, but please do so by showing courtesy to the petitioner and to the commissioners. Address all your questions to the commission. And we will get started with our public hearing. Roll call, please.
Connell.
Present.
Hepner.
Here.
Ingram.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
Lammers is excused. Manus.
Here.
Bed. Quinn.
Here.
Reinhartz.
Here.
Tallman here. Schneider.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. First item on our agenda is the public hearing for case REZ 18-18 as a request by Ahmed Ismail for WK Development to rezone 0.83 acres more or less of property located immediately northwest of the intersection of Elsie Avenue and West Kimberly Road from R5M medium density residential to C2 general commercial district. Matt?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Matt Flynn, Community Planning and Economic Development Department. This rezoning is across from the Walmart property, just west of the new Genesis Center. It's really some of the only low-density residentially fronted property along the West Kimberly corridor. Like I said, it's surrounded by three sides by either commercially zoned property or commercial development. We had a neighborhood meeting about a week and a half ago. We had no neighbors showed up. This is the property again. This is the Kimberly entrance to the Walmart Center. The gas station there. I believe that's the vacant Wendy's. I could be wrong though. The Genesis Healthplex has been built here. Driveway set back from the intersection here. The intersection is signalized. Here's stepping out a little bit more. Here's the current zoning situation. Genesis and the new Dutrack Zone Planned Development District. R5M, basically property on Elsie, and then the former Kmart development has a C1 zoning classification. M1 across the street, again M1 have a lot of it in our current code, soon to be former code, that allows both commercial and industrial uses, the developer's best friend. Future land use map, again, a lot of these we've had recently showing up two different classifications. We have the kind of the lighter yellow, that is the RG residential general, and then the red is regional commercial. So you can see how maybe you would see that as a bit of an anomaly, having that property extend all the way to Kimberly. And then the future land use map, and probably want to spend just a little bit of time on this. Colors didn't show up real good, but anyway, we are the proposed zoning map has now the U-Haul development and the outlots, as well as the Walmart moving forward with a C3 designation and C2 on the Genesis property. C2 is what's proposed for these three lots, but as maybe the petitioner can explain, they are proposing to combine this property with this lot here that they also own and create one zoning lot. That would create a lot of about 1.7 acres. In that case, you can have lots that have different zoning classifications that can be a little bit messy, but here we are in the process of adopting a new code. We're suggesting that we can support a C2 zoning classification here, kind of regardless of what happens on the 3 lots that are currently being considered for rezoning. And there's that definition for residential general that you all have memorized. As we move forward, we're going to be concerned with making sure that traffic on LC can be managed. We want to make sure that we're sensitive to the issues of buffering and transitions to the residential neighborhood to the north, and as I mentioned, that zoning of the adjacent lot. Again, that kind of shows that lot that we're proposing as part of the new zoning ordinance to be zoned C2. With that, any questions?
Matt, when I drove out there today, I noticed in between what would be, I didn't realize the lot to the west next to Discount Tire was part of this, but I did notice there's either at a minimum a creek or very least a drainage ditch that has a culvert, if I thought, the one under Kimberly or whatever that splits those 2 lots. Is that going to be addressed?
Well, obviously we'll have to, any development here will have to meet our stormwater requirements and any engineering requirements. Eric Longlet is here. I know there's been some discussion there. Do you have anything to add at this point?
Eric Longlet with the engineering department. We have been in talk with the developer, and I have a history. I working with the developer on the property to the west. There is a drainage way that goes down through there. Their engineering firm would have to provide an engineering document to show how they're going to handle that and how it would meet our stormwater requirements.
Thanks, Eric. Commissioners, have any questions for Matt? Seeing none, thank you, Matt. Would the petitioner like to step forward and explain his project?
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Charlie Armstrong. I'm a commercial real estate broker with NAI Rural Commercial here in town, and I represent WK Development. I'm here to speak in support of rezoning these 4 parcels to C2. In 2003, WK Development purchased 16 acres. This would have been prior to the Walmart construction, and they marketed this whole development and farther to the west as Westland Square. They sold a lot on the corner to IH Mississippi Valley Credit Union. They built a 7,800 square foot strip mall. They sold a lot for Culver's Restaurant. They sold a lot for Discount Tire. And this development thus far has created over $4 million in assessed value. And since that time, these developments have paid just under $2 million in property taxes. After 15 years, 2 lots remain unsold. There's 10 acres in the rear, which you see marked as C3 on that map. And then we have this lot 5 that has remained unsold and been trying for 15 years. Lot 5 measures 0.896 acres. In 2004, WK Development purchased the first house on the corner, 3916 North Elsie, and then later purchased 3924. At that time, they believed that the future of this corner was commercial. Today, 14 years later, that seems to be the case. Across the street, we just had Genesis finish a 43,000 square foot healthplex. The lots sit at a signalized intersection. They're across the street from a 214,000 square foot super Walmart. Traffic counts are approximately 26,000 vehicles per day. And commercial development or buildings sit on 3 sides of the requested lots. In my professional opinion as a commercial real estate broker, the highest and best use for this corner is commercial. Based upon all of this, it's an opportune time for WK Development to come forward and develop this hard corner. After a long drought of commercial development in West Davenport, we're beginning to see some activity again. Lot 5, which has remained unsold for 15 years, is .896 acres and frankly is a bit small for commercial development. The two houses at 3916 and 3924 total .57 acres, also too small for commercial development. By combining these lots along with a fourth parcel right in the front, we have a 1.71 acre lot, which is a very attractive size for commercial development. So therefore, I would support and recommend that these properties be rezoned to C2. Any
Thank you.
questions I can answer?
Commissioners, any questions of the petitioner at this time? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to step forward and speak in favor of this petition? Do so at this time. Seeing none, would anybody like to speak in opposition? If so, please step forward and identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Lannon, and I live at 4005 North Elsie, which is just out. It's on the corner, up. With the addition of this Genesis, the city also changed the bus route. So now we have city buses up and down Elsie, which do not go the speed limit. I've called the city about that. They said, well, we'll talk about that and get it taken care of. Well, that it happened for a day, and we're right back at it. I mean, up and down. And we've got kids on this block. Genesis, okay, maybe they're going to be a good neighbor. I've called about that because we have people shooting straight out of their driveway into Elsie, not stopping. I've almost T-boned people 2 or 3 times. And I've called about, oh, we can't put a stop sign there. You've got to talk to Genesis. But I've got a friend there. I'll call. This has been 2 months. Still no stop sign on their driveway. There's going to be a bad accident there. Somebody's going to get killed. There is a lot more traffic with that. People trying to get into Genesis, trying to get out, up and down the street. I can see no reason to put anything commercial on that corner when we have families living in those 2 houses. What about the lot that is over on Hillendale and Kimberly? That thing has sat empty for years and has got a sign for sale. Why are we disrupting families to put more when there are still outbuildings that are empty in the Walmart lot, over in the, I believe in the one that's farther west of that, that's got a Oriental restaurant in it, and there's several other places in there. Why do we have to give up our neighborhood for more commercial when we've done that for Genesis and Do-Track? But like I say, the traffic on the street, Elsie, has gotten absolutely ridiculous. It's posted 25 miles an hour. There's very few that go 25 miles an hour on that street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, commissioners, any final questions of staff for the petitioner at this time? Seeing none, we will therefore close case number REZ 18-18, and it will return to us
Not till January 15th.
January 15th, correct. With a recommendation from staff. Our next item is case number FPV 18-01, a request of Riverfront Improvement Commission and Taste of Ethiopia LLC for a floodplain variance to establish business at 102 South Harrison Street. Laura? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Laura Berkeley with Community Planning and Economic Development. I'm a certified floodplain manager and took over, along with my colleague Megan Overton, for implementing our flood damage prevention ordinance in the city after Wayne Willey retired. So we have a flood variance request for a development that's happening at 106 South Harrison Street in the Union Station Package Express building. It's the small building directly to the west.
Just a minor correction. My paperwork says 102. Is it
102.
106 or 1? Okay.
It's 102. So the reason a variance is being requested is the Taste of Ethiopia, which is an Ethiopian restaurant that the city approved a lease contract with. The property is owned by the Levy Commission, River Improvement Commission now. And so the city has approved a lease with Taste of Ethiopia, and the petitioner is here and can speak to any of your questions regarding that project. It was triggered full compliance with the flood development or flood damage prevention ordinance, which is any investment over 50% of the assessed value of the building. It's assessed very low. It's assessed at $48,000. They're putting in well over $100,000 worth of build out for the restaurant, as a building that's hasn't been a restaurant before. It's expensive to turn into a restaurant. Because the building has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the city is supportive of requesting a variance from the requirement, which would be to fill the basement or elevate the property or put in flood venting, which would compromise the historic character of the building. So that kind of just explains where it's the ordinance 15.44110. It was listed in 1983 on the National Register of Historic Places, and the elevating would risk its listing. So it's kind of hard to see on this PowerPoint, but the little building right here is what we're talking about. It's not Union Station, it's a little building next to it. It sits slightly higher than Union Station. These are some of the elevations associated with it. The main floor of the building actually is 1.2 feet above the base flood elevation, so the work and main investment is actually in compliance. It's just the fact that it has a basement that's the issue. So here you can kind of see where the work is. This is where approximately the base flood elevation is, and this line here is where the first floor is. It's 1.2 feet above that base flood elevation. So when we evaluated compliance with the flood ordinance, we looked at some options. There is a little side stair and that goes down into the basement. The basement is about 10 feet tall, like has 10-foot ceilings. So if we filled the basement, it would we'd need to take out that window, and the fill would go up to about that point on the door, so we'd lose that doorway. If we chose to flood vents are required to be no more than 1 foot above grade, and so it would need to go into the stone at the bottom here. This is the basement, and it is wet at this point. There had just been a flood, so there is some water seepage, but generally speaking, it doesn't fill completely with water. There is a commercial grade sump pump in place right now. So this line here is about 4 feet. The variance request is for, there will be a water heater, a commercial grade water heater. It's going to be attached to the wall above that mark. So it is mitigated, although still below the base flood elevation. So here's the findings. Subject properties listed on the National Register of Places. Floodplain management practices would prefer it be mitigated, but it needs to be tempered with historic character and resources. It does meet the economic goals and historic preservation goals in the comprehensive plan. Proposed development for economic redevelopment, and there are some conditions for development to meet the minimum variance. So our recommendations is that all existing utilities minus the water heater be put on the first floor. All other mechanicals are on the roof, and then the water heater be elevated as much as possible. and no other permanent structures be placed in that basement. The DNR must concur with your findings and your recommendation. And then the basement remains unoccupied space.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a curiosity question. Does it do any good to put any amount of fill in the basement? I understand, the 10 feet obviously is not, filling it completely isn't going to do much here. It's going to probably be a negative impact to the historic structure, but put 3, 4, 5 feet, does that matter at all?
It wouldn't really make a substantial difference, no.
Okay.
Once you get more than 3 feet below the base flood elevation, any water pressure could cause any existing hydrostatic pressure on the building. So filling even that much is not going to have a significant impact. The most it would have is on flood insurance, but it would be minimal.
Commissioner Johnson.
Just to be clear, so you're just talking about the additional building, not actual.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just the small building to the west. It's not that main Union Station building.
Okay. And that's, I assume, pretty much probably flooded its
The basement
majority
has
of its life.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
It's been around for a long time. So if it's in your staff report, but it would be, in order for water to completely surround the building, it would be a flood similar to 2001 or 93. So they're not very frequent. And even at that level, in the front part of the building, you're looking at flood depths of 1.5 feet. On the back side, it would be more than 2 to 4 feet. It's a little bit lower in the back of the building.
And then the vents that you had talked about, can you explain a little bit about how they work? And then, I guess, in your opinion, would installing those affect the structural integrity of the building?
Sure. So they have engineered flood vents that you can install in buildings. You cut a hole in the building, and you need to have enough square footage of the vent to be complementary to the square footage of the building. And then you need to have them on at least 2 sides of the building in order for water to flow. It wouldn't work very well in this situation because it does have a basement, and I do feel like it wouldn't compromise the structural integrity of the building, but it would compromise the historic character of the building.
Commissioner Schneider.
Are they going to be required to have flood insurance, and if so, are they going to be able to procure it?
So the city, as the owner of the property, already has flood insurance on the property. It is optional for the tenant to have flood insurance, but they would be able to obtain it.
Any additional questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Laura. Would anybody else like to step forward and speak in favor of this petition? Would anybody like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, commissioners, final chance for questions? Seeing none, we will close case number FPV 18-01. It too will return to us at our January meeting. Matt, I see that in our other business, down our future business, well, that's where I'm going. Matt, I see that it's later in our agenda under other business. We're going to actually take a vote on this,
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you. That would conclude our public hearing. We'll move on to our regular meeting. Roll call, please.
Connell,
Still present.
Hepner,
Still here.
Ingram,
Present.
Johnson?
Present.
Lammer's excused. Manus,
Here.
Ned's excused. Quinn,
Here.
Reinhart's,
Here.
Tallman here. Schneider.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Report of City Council activity.
Nothing bad.
Thank you. Secretary's report.
Move the report. Second.
All in favor of the Secretary's report as written, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It will stay as written. We'll move on to comp plan. Anything new, Matt?
Well, I didn't know whether or not to report the zoning ordinance status under council activity or this, and I chose this. But anyway, we are moving towards the third reading, which would be basically the home stretch for adoption of the ordinance on January 2nd. There'll be the final committee of the whole meeting, and then there'll be a vote on the 9th. We continue to get calls, comments, questions, concerns. We are basically telling people that if they're concerned about the zoning of the proposed zoning of their property and it reflects an upzoning, a more intense classification, that we as the staff would not be advocating one way or another, that should be voiced through their elected officials, so that if you hear people with concerns, that's how you should direct them, or direct them back to us. Again, that being said, then we'll be looking at, like I said, adoption, the finishing up of basically user manuals, and starting to work with continue to work with our other departments and people on the outside, getting people used to the new ordinance, and then in a few months probably come back and do some cleanup.
Thank you, Matt. Looking forward to both items. Appreciate that. Move on to zoning activity. Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two cases. The first one being REZ 18-17, requested Tim Schaefer, Dale's Automotive Service, to rezone 1915 Zenith Avenue from R4 Moderate Density Dwelling District to C2 General Commercial District. Staff recommends the Plan Zoning Commission forward case REZ 18-17 to the City Council for approval with the following findings and 2 conditions, and I so move.
Second.
Case number REZ 18-17 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Matt?
Give this a second to wake up. Again, just point of background, recall there was a rezoning a couple months ago that rezoned 2 other adjacent properties, and through really no one's fault other than a faulty legal description, bad survey, that the amount of land that was zoned would not accommodate the proposed building expansion for Mr. Schaefer's business, Dale's Automotive. So again, it's pretty straightforward. We did not have any comments at the neighborhood meeting. We didn't have any comments at the public hearing. We're really just talking about an incremental increase along a commercial corridor, area zone, residential general, but again, on edges, we feel that the proposed development and rezoning is compatible with the neighborhood. So again, we recommend approval. You see the 3 findings. We believe it is consistent with the comp plan because it is a commercial node along an edge, has good access and frontage on Locust Street. Rezoning will facilitate the expansion of a good business in West Davenport. We do believe that at a minimum, I think a fence would be very appropriate along the north property line. There may be additional buffering measures going in, but we think the fence is important. And because here we are in this interim period, we believe that even though we've been moving forward under the current zoning, by the time we're through, we'll be in the new world, and the new zoning classification as C2 corridor commercial would be appropriate for this location. That, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, I appreciate it, Matt. At this time, if the petitioner chooses to step forward, he can. He's not obligated to, since this is a regular meeting and not a public hearing. At this time also, I will take anybody in either favor or opposition that would like to step forward. Seeing none. Commissioners, any final questions? Again, seeing none, roll call, please.
Connell,
Yes.
Hepner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Manus,
Yes.
Quinn,
Yes.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Tolman, yes, and Schneider.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Last case is case REZ 18-19, request of St. Ambrose University for rezoning from R4 Moderate Density Dwelling District and C2 General Commercial District to PID, Planned Institutional District, on .675 acres more or less, and an amendment to a PID, Planned Institutional District land use plan for the property located west of Harrison Street, north of West Locust Street, east of Brown Street, and south of West Lombard Street. The purpose of the request is to allow a substantial addition to the building located at the northeast corner of West Locust and Gaines. I got a recommendation here somewhere. Staff recommends the Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward case REZ 18-19 to the City Council. recommendation of approval subject to the following one condition, and I so move.
Case number 8, REZ 18-19 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Commissioner Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be abstaining from this case.
Thank you, sir. Ryan.
Good evening, Ryan Rusnak, Community Plan Economic Development. Very briefly, this is a planned institutional district that was approved in 2012. One of the triggers for a major amendment, which essentially is akin to a rezoning, is that if there is a setback reduction by more than 10%, St. Ambrose would like to construct a substantial addition to McMullen Hall, and so they are reducing that setback by 10%, and therefore triggered the major amendment. Took also the opportunity to include some properties that they did not include in the 2012 Plan Institutional District. But it's staff's opinion that the amendment's pretty minor considering it's moving towards a major transportation corridor in the city. We did send notices to residents within 500 feet. We had a neighborhood meeting. A small number of people showed up. We have not received any letters of objection to date. Staff does recommend approval. The condition pertains to the new zoning classification that would be approved with the new zoning ordinance. So we'd like a condition in there that the property would essentially rezone to the SIC, which we anticipate will be adopted in January. So that's our recommendation. I know the St. Ambrose team is here if you have any technical questions for them, but otherwise staff does recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none. At this time, would the petitioner have any interest in stepping forward? Are you comfortable? Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak either in favor or opposition at this time? Seeing none. Final call for questions. Roll call, please.
Hepner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Manus,
Yes.
Quinn abstains. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Tolman, yes, Schneider,
Yes.
and Connell.
Yes.
That motion carries, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. At this time, we have no additional activity for subdivision, future business. One item for you to study over the next 2-3 weeks. Communications at this time. If anybody in the audience has any comments, you're welcome to speak. Seeing none, we'll move on to other business. Could Commissioner Tallman, could you read case number FPV 18-01?
Sure. Case number FPV 18-01, request of Riverfront Improvement Commission and Taste of Ethiopia LLC for a floodplain variance to establish business at 102 South Harrison Street. Staff recommends that the Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and approve the request subject to the listed 3 conditions and forward to the Iowa Department of Natural Resources for its concurrence, and I so move.
Second.
Case number SPV 18-01's been moved and seconded for discussion. Laura, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
I do not at this time. I know that Steve Aarons with the Riverfront Improvement Commission was unable to make it today. He's over conducting his own meeting for that commission. Would you like to say anything? Oh, we're good. Thank you so much for your consideration.
No audience anymore. That's fine. Commissioners, any final questions before we take a vote? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Manus,
Yes.
Quinn,
Yes.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Schneider,
Yes.
Connell,
Yes.
and Hepner.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for jumping in there, Commissioner Tallman. At this time, I do not see anything in addition to our agenda. But prior to adjournment, I would like to say that this morning I had kind of a personal heart scare, and with that in mind, I would like to, it all worked out fine. I would like to ask everybody to take a few moments to enjoy this Christmas and New Year's. Give a hug to your family, give a hug to your friends, put your political aspirations aside, and let's enjoy the holidays. Hope everybody has a great time. Hope to see everybody back next year. Do I have a motion for adjournment? All in favor of adjournment? Opposed? We are adjourned. Please drive home safely.